Hello, my name is Chris, and today I want to introduce to you a book that is not from the book list, but one of the famous Robert Louis Stevenson's books, Will O' the Mill. Why I'm not choosing a book from the book list is because they're so boring. For the first few pages, I'd be fine, but from the 10th page or so, the text starts to get blurry, then my arms start to fail on me. It's basically like this would be a normal human sleepiness when they are reading a book, and this would be
Look at
me.
this
So I've
dude.
got a problem when it comes to reading books or just being somewhat of a functional human being overall. But anyways, I chose Will o' the Mill from one of those books that have a bunch of short stories, and it was that book where I had read one of his famous books, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and it was pretty good, so I chose one of his books again. But before I tell you about the book, I want to give you a little insight on the author of this book, Robert Louis Stevenson. And I have to say, he does look a fair deal like your principal. Born in Edinburgh, Scotland on November 13th, 1850, he was studying to become a lighthouse engineer until around the age of 20 when he decided to become a writer and pursue his dream. However, during his times of studies, there were many times he had to move schools due to his
hereditary
health problem regarding his lungs. For the rest of his life, he wrote books until he died due to his health problem. Some of his most famous books he wrote are The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde or Treasure Island. Will o' the Mill is about Will, who is living with his adopted parents in an inn that they own that is on top of a hill. There was a river that flew downwards and a road to accompany it. There were many people and travelers going downhill in search for the eternal city, but few were going uphill. Will, like the majority of people, wanted to go downhill because it was less tiring and everyone was doing it. Will also wanted to go somewhere, travel. Will always wanted to go somewhere, travel, and find new things. One day, an old man came to the inn and told stories of those who traveled downwards, and it wasn't that inspiring for Will. A few days later, his parents die, and Will is now the owner of the inn. Unlike his parents, he hires some servants to help him. Due to some unfortunate events, a parson and his daughter are left with nowhere to live. Will insists that they stay at his inn for now. Will and the parson's daughter, Marjorie, become really close friends. Marjorie gets married to someone and dies soon thereafter. Will, left with no one, was in despair. However, thanks to his wisdom and friendliness, his fame grew and he wasn't lonely anymore. One day, a doctor comes and says he can heal the mind and body with one treatment. He reveals that he is deaf and takes him away to the afterlife on a horse carriage. Not sure if that's exactly how it works, but Will gladly accepts it because it means that he can be with Marjorie again. Up until the first third of the book, the theme or message was not to follow the crowd or trend or do what everyone else was doing. But then it suddenly turns into this weird love story that I wasn't on board with, because love stories are gross. But more importantly, it didn't follow the initial part of the book that got me hooked into it. While turns and twists in a plot are important in making a good story, this wasn't a really good example of it. It kind of felt like two completely different stories were stitched together and didn't know how to complement each other. Something I kind of struggled with was the use of Old English. like I have my say, or I was happy as a man need be. And while reading these sentences, I thought to myself, when was this book written in? 1878? So the book overall wasn't the best, and I wouldn't really recommend it to anyone else.